I think the struggle that we're facing today is between those movements and groups that deny plurality, that want to return allegedly to a past where it was allegedly more homogeneous. So there is a dogma of purity that denies that plurality. And to be honest, I think difference is nothing that has to scare me. I'm always surprised why people should be scared by another person's difference. I mean, why should I be scared by someone who's straight? It doesn't affect my queerness. And why should I be scared by someone, wearing a veil? It doesn't affect the way I walk around. It doesn't affect my, faith. So I think we have to strengthen the discourse of impurity again. We should look at the structures, at the habits, at the rituals, at the common social practices that re-establish on an everyday basis inequality, between men and women, and evidently also between heterosexuals and LGBTIQ. And that, I think, is crucial with regard to sexual violence and abuse and femicide, but it's also the case with regard to right extremism and the right radical movements. Is very, very often there is the perception of, discussing one individual case or one particular case of right extreme terrorism, and then we forget it, and then there's the next case of right extreme terrorism. So we discuss Christchurch, and we discuss, Anders Breivik, and we discuss Halle in Germany, and that's not going to change anything. It's not individual cases. It's not just these guys. We're talking about, an international global structure. And so unless we perceive this as an ideology, as a movement, as a connected network, we're not going to stop any of this violence. So I think it's the media's responsibility to not just isolate these cases, but really show the context, show the ideological context, the political context, the social context, and show how central to the common political discourse racism is. Show how institutionalized racism and sexism is. Each and every one of us has to, I think, be realistic or be honest about what makes us privileged and what allows us to be considered as belonging to a certain society, and which aspects are less privileged, mark us as others. And so I think this is what is crucial in our current times, is that we I think address these mechanisms of othering and try to subvert and disrupt them. If we talk about collective identities, if we talk about belonging, it's always crucial to look what made someone allegedly belong to a certain group. Is it really a choice? Or is it a projection? Is it repression? Is it racism, anti-Semitism that makes them belong to a group? There are certain individuals and certain groups in particular context who have reason to be scared. If you're queer and you walk around in certain areas, you have reason to be afraid. If you're a person of color, there are certain areas in Europe where you have reason to be afraid. Currently, the discourse of fear is mostly dominated by those who construct fear, who create and construct a paranoia about Christian Europe that's allegedly under attack. There's a certain fear that's reasonable and legitimate, and then there's one that is constructed as paranoia only in order to legitimize revisionist racist discourse. Very often we find ourselves within sexist structures or heteronormative structures or binary structures, sometimes without even realizing how much they exclude our desires and our bodies and, our existential way of being. And sometimes we do realize how much they structure us, but then the ability to resist, the ability to speak up, the ability to criticize is underdeveloped. And why we are just paralyzed, or why we're just silent, or why we're not quick enough to get out of a certain situation or take somebody else out of a certain situation, or just criticize somebody who acts rudely or brutally or in a racist or in a sexist manner. When you're confronted with violence, even just as a witness, that it takes away your ability to give it words. There is a particular connection between violence and speechlessness, and that is that those who are affected by violence, those who are victims of violence, very often, at first, are in a state of shock. I think this moment of shock is one that also takes away our ability to give it words. We have to reassign the sense of shame and guilt to where it belongs. And the people who continue to nurture that ideology of inequality, the people who continue to support patriarchic society, the people who continue to suggest that there are certain ways of desiring that are acceptable and other ways of desiring that are sick or perverse, they should feel guilty, and not the ones who are formed by this, who are repressed, who are excluded, who are marked and othered. They shouldn't feel ashamed. And so I think that is part of what I think is really key to that struggle, that we speak about shame, that we speak about guilt, and we actually, put it where it belongs. For me, emancipation always begins with storytelling. It begins with someone saying to another, this is what I endured, this is what I experienced, and somebody saying this is wrong. This has to stop. It is important to share this with others, to find others, to realize this is not something that happened to me because I did something wrong, but to understand there's a structure. This is not an individual case. There is a structure, and we can only fight the structure if we fight it as a collective, that we seek others who have experienced the same, if we create a language that we have in common. I do have the impression that we're living in really dark times. And I think at the moment we need, on one hand, I think a vocabulary and an expression of our melancholia, of our political anger, of our discontent. I think we need to have a language for the pain that many of us feel every day when confronted with, racist, anti-feminist, hormone transphobic, authoritarian movements and parties and regimes. But at the same time, I think we cannot battle these movements and these developments without a language of desire, a language of utopia. So I'm always a bit worried if, if the articulation of political melancholia is not accompanied by, a political desire. We need a political desire, and I'm quite disconcerted by the fact that it seems that it's the right extreme that have utopian discourse. It's really important to have, evidently, the possibility to express pain and melancholia and anger, because all these are, political reactions to a situation that is limiting your freedom, that is creating, growing inequality, that's denying the rights of minorities, that is, attacking the bodies of, certain people. Anger is fine as long as it is constructive, as long as it does not just imitate the violence and the hatred that one is supposed to combat. I do not think because of climate change or because of any political development that we are unhappy with, that violence is justified. But I do think civil disobedience as a form of disruption, civil disobedience as a form of symbolically breaking the law, always on the condition of non-violence, always on the condition of this being sort of a pacifist struggle for change, always on the condition also of accepting the legal punishment. Under all of these conditions, I do think it's great and fabulous and helpful and much needed that we think about new and creative and poetic and, civil disobedient forms of calling for change. Do we who want to fight repression, do we who want to subvert inequality, do we who want different forms of expressing our sexuality and our desires, do we ourselves reproduce essentialistic identities, or do we ourselves reproduce resentment or hatred or dogma? That is exactly what we want to subvert. So the struggle for, freer or more desirable ways of living together should not just reproduce orthodoxy. We want to subvert orthodoxy. We want to subvert dogmas of purity.